Picture this. It's your birthday. You wake up excited, ready to celebrate another year of life. You put on your best outfit, grab your favorite coffee, and head to the job you've poured your heart into for 3 years. But instead of birthday wishes, you get a pink slip. Instead of cake, you get humiliation. And the reason? Something so ridiculous, so petty, that it would make your blood boil. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. But here's the thing about pushing someone too far on their birthday. Sometimes they push back harder than you ever imagined possible. Sarah Martinez had always been the type of person who arrived at work 15 minutes early and stayed 15 minutes late. At 28, she'd built a reputation at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions as the go-to person for impossible deadlines and difficult clients. Her cubicle in the downtown Phoenix office was pristine, organized with color-coded folders and a small succulent plant she'd named Gerald. March 15th had started like any other day, except Sarah had woken up with that familiar birthday excitement bubbling in her chest. 29 years old today. She'd treated herself to a new blazer, navy blue with silver buttons, and stopped at her favorite coffee shop for a caramel macchiato, instead of her usual black coffee. The Pinnacle Marketing Building was a gleaming glass tower that reflected the Arizona sun like a mirror. Sarah badged in at 8:45 a.m., her heels clicking against the marble lobby floor. She'd been hoping maybe her colleagues would remember her birthday, perhaps surprise her with a small celebration. 3 years of working there, and she'd never missed anyone else's birthday cake in the break room. "Morning, Sarah," called out Jennifer Walsh from reception. Jennifer was one of the few people Sarah considered a friend at work, a bubbly redhead who always wore bright lipstick and knew everyone's coffee order. "Morning, Jen. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Sarah couldn't help but smile. Maybe today would be different. Absolutely gorgeous. "Hey, did you hear about the Henderson account? Word is they're finally ready to sign." Sarah's heart lifted. The Henderson account was her baby, a luxury hotel chain that she'd been courting for 8 months. She'd created 3 different campaign proposals, attended countless meetings, and even worked through her Christmas vacation to perfect their pitch. If they were ready to sign, it would be the biggest win of her career. "Really? That's fantastic news." Sarah practically bounced toward the elevator. "I haven't heard anything official yet, but I've been waiting for their call." The elevator dinged and Sarah stepped inside, her reflection grinning back at her from the polished steel door. 29 and about to land the biggest client of her career. Maybe this birthday would be memorable for all the right reasons. The marketing department occupied the entire 14th floor, with glass-walled offices lining the perimeter and an open concept workspace in the center. Sarah's cubicle was in the middle section, strategically positioned so she could see both the elevator and the coffee machine. Prime real estate for someone who liked to stay aware of office dynamics. She settled into her ergonomic chair and powered up her computer, already mentally preparing for the congratulatory calls and emails about Henderson. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in a golden glow that made even the generic office furniture look elegant. "Sarah, could I see you in my office?" The voice made her freeze mid-sip of her caramel macchiato. Margaret Blackwood, the department head, stood behind her cubicle wearing an expression that could freeze lava. Margaret was a woman who wore her authority like armor: sharp suits, sharper heels, and a haircut that looked like it cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. At 52, she'd climbed the corporate ladder by stepping on anyone who got in her way, and she had a particular talent for making people feel small. "Of course, Margaret. Is this about Henderson?" Sarah grabbed her notebook and pen, assuming they'd be discussing strategy for closing the deal. "Just come to my office." Margaret's tone was clipped, professional, but there was something underneath it that made Sarah's stomach twist slightly. Margaret's office was a monument to corporate success. Awards lined the walls, a massive desk dominated the space, and the view of downtown Phoenix stretched out behind her like a personal kingdom. Sarah had only been in this office a handful of times, usually for performance reviews or major project discussions. "Please, sit down." Margaret gestured to one of the leather chairs across from her desk. Sarah noticed she didn't offer coffee or small talk, which was unusual even for Margaret's typically businesslike demeanor. "I'll get straight to the point," Margaret began, settling into her chair with the confidence of someone who'd delivered bad news before. "We're going to have to let you go." Sarah blinked, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your employment with Pinnacle Marketing Solutions is being terminated, effective immediately." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles going white. "I don't understand. The Henderson account is about to close. My performance reviews have been excellent, and I've never had any disciplinary issues." Margaret opened a manila folder on her desk, her movements deliberate and cold. "That's actually what we need to discuss. It's come to our attention that you've been engaging in unprofessional behavior that reflects poorly on the company." "Unprofessional behavior?" Sarah's voice came out higher than she intended. "What are you talking about?" "Your social media presence, for one." Margaret pulled out a printed screenshot from the folder. "This Facebook post from last weekend." Sarah leaned forward, squinting at the paper. It was a photo she'd posted of herself at a friend's wedding, wearing a strapless red dress and holding a glass of champagne. She was laughing at something someone had said, her head thrown back in genuine joy. "I don't understand the problem," Sarah said slowly. "This was taken at my college roommate's wedding. I was a bridesmaid." "The problem," Margaret said, her voice dripping with disdain, "is that you're representing our company even when you're not at work. This image projects a certain lifestyle that doesn't align with our corporate values." Sarah stared at the photo, her mind reeling. "It's a wedding photo. I'm fully clothed. I'm not doing anything inappropriate, and I'm not even wearing any company-branded clothing. You're holding alcohol. It's champagne at a wedding reception, and your dress is quite revealing." Sarah looked at the photo again. The dress was elegant, appropriate for a formal wedding, and showed no more skin than half the outfits she'd seen at company events. "Margaret, this is a completely normal wedding photo. I don't understand how this could possibly be grounds for termination." Margaret flipped to another page in the folder. "There's also this incident from 2 weeks ago." Another screenshot, this time from Sarah's Instagram story. It showed her at a local restaurant with friends, a plate of nachos in front of her, with the caption "Girls' Night Out." "Sometimes you just need good food and better friends." "What's wrong with this?" Sarah asked, genuinely bewildered. "You tagged your location as being in Phoenix on a Thursday evening. Our policy clearly states that employees should maintain a professional image at all times." "I went to dinner with friends on my own time." "How is that unprofessional?" "It shows poor judgment and lack of commitment to your career. Someone truly dedicated to their position wouldn't be out partying on weeknights." Sarah felt like she was in an alternate universe. It was dinner at 7 p.m. "I was home by 9:30. Margaret closed the folder with a decisive snap. "The decision has been made. Your behavior on social media demonstrates a lack of professionalism and poor judgment that we cannot tolerate in our corporate environment. You'll need to clear out your desk immediately. This is insane." Sarah stood up, her chair rolling backward. "You're firing me on my birthday because I posted normal photos of myself living my life outside of work." "Your birthday has nothing to do with this decision," Margaret said, though there was a slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "And I'd suggest you watch your tone. We'll be providing a neutral reference, but that could change if you make this difficult." Sarah felt the room spinning slightly. 3 years of dedicated work, of missed dinners and weekend emails, of going above and beyond for every client and project, and they were firing her because she'd posted a photo of herself at a wedding. "What about Henderson?" she asked, grasping for some sense of reason. "I've spent 8 months building that relationship. They're about to sign a contract worth $2 million. Margaret's smirk became more pronounced. "That's actually being reassigned to Derek Chen. He'll be taking over all your accounts." Derek Chen. Sarah's stomach dropped. Derek was Margaret's nephew, a recent MBA graduate who'd been hired 6 months ago despite having no real marketing experience. He'd been shadowing Sarah on several projects, supposedly to learn the ropes, but now she realized he'd been positioning himself to take over her work. "Derek doesn't know anything about Henderson," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's attended 2 meetings. He doesn't understand their brand, their goals, their concerns. I'm sure he'll manage just fine." He has excellent credentials. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The pieces were clicking together in Sarah's mind. Derek was family. Derek needed a big win to justify his position. And Sarah, with her successful track record and strong client relationships, was an obstacle to Derek's advancement. "This isn't about social media at all," Sarah said, looking Margaret directly in the eye. "This is about giving my accounts to your nephew." Margaret's expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. "I'd be very careful about making accusations you can't prove, especially when you're about to be escorted out of the building." As if summoned by her words, two security guards appeared in the doorway. Sarah recognized them, Frank and Miguel, who usually manned the lobby desk. They looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with her. "Gentlemen, Ms. Martinez needs to collect her personal belongings, and then you'll escort her out," Margaret said, her tone now purely businesslike. Sarah walked back to her cubicle in a daze, aware that every eye in the office was on her. Jennifer Walsh looked up from her desk near the elevator, her face a mask of shock and concern. Other colleagues pretended to be busy with their computers, but Sarah could feel their stare. Her personal belongings fit into a single cardboard box: Gerald the succulent, a framed photo of her parents, a coffee mug her sister had given her for Christmas, and a small collection of pens and notebooks. 3 years of her life reduced to items that could fit in a banker's box. "I'm so sorry," Jennifer whispered as Sarah walked past. "This is crazy." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. If she opened her mouth, she might scream, and that would only give Margaret more ammunition. The elevator ride down felt eternal. Frank and Miguel stood silently beside her, their discomfort palpable. These were men who'd chatted with her about their families, who'd helped her when she'd locked herself out of her car in the parking garage. Now they were part of her humiliation. The lobby was busy with the morning rush, people coming in for meetings, delivery drivers, other employees grabbing coffee from the small cafe near the entrance. Sarah kept her head down, but she could feel the curious stares. Word would spread quickly through the building's gossip network. "Sarah, your access badge," Miguel said quietly when they reached the turnstiles. She fumbled in her purse, pulling out the badge she'd worn proudly for 3 years. The photo showed her on her first day, nervous but excited, ready to make her mark in the marketing world. That woman felt like a stranger now. The morning sun was blindingly bright after the air-conditioned building. Sarah stood on the sidewalk, holding her pathetic box of belongings, watching office workers stream past her into the building where she'd worked until 10 minutes ago. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer: "Meet me at Cafe Luna at noon. We need to talk." Sarah looked up at the Pinnacle marketing building, its glass facade reflecting the desert sky. Somewhere up there, Derek Chen was probably already moving into her accounts, calling her clients, taking credit for months of her work. She thought about the Henderson account, about the campaign she'd crafted specifically for their brand values and target demographic. She thought about the late nights she'd spent perfecting their proposal, the industry research she'd conducted, the relationships she'd built with their decision-maker. And she thought about Margaret Blackwood's smirk, the satisfaction in her voice when she'd delivered the news on Sarah's birthday. As she walked toward her car, Sarah Martinez made a decision. She wasn't going to slink away quietly. She wasn't going to let them destroy her reputation with trumped-up charges about social media professionalism. And she sure as hell wasn't going to let them steal her work and give it to someone who couldn't tell a marketing strategy from a shopping list. It was her birthday, after all. Time to give herself a present. By nightfall, Pinnacle Marketing Solutions would learn that Sarah Martinez wasn't the type of woman you could push around. Not today, not ever. Sarah sat in her car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at the concrete wall in front of her. The box of her belongings sat in the passenger seat like evidence of a crime. Her phone had been buzzing with notifications, probably LinkedIn alerts about her profile being viewed, or maybe word was already spreading through the industry grapevine. The lunch meeting with Jennifer couldn't come soon enough. Sarah needed answers, and Jennifer Walsh had been at Pinnacle long enough to know where all the bodies were buried. But first, She had some detective work to do. She drove to her apartment complex, a modern development called Desert Springs that she'd chosen specifically for its location, 12 minutes from the office, close enough to come in early or stay late when needed. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her apartment was a reflection of her organized mind: clean lines, everything in its place, a small balcony overlooking the community pool. She'd bought furniture piece by piece, investing in quality items that would last. The dining table had been her splurge last year, solid oak with matching chairs where she'd spent countless evenings working on client presentations. Sarah set her box on the kitchen counter and immediately opened her laptop. If Margaret thought she could destroy her reputation with fabricated social media violations, she was about to learn that Sarah Martinez didn't go down without a fight. Her first stop was the employee handbook. She'd received it as a PDF when she started, and like the diligent employee she was, she'd actually read it. The social media policy was on page 47, and as she read through it again, her anger crystallized into something sharper. The policy prohibited employees from posting content that could reasonably be construed as reflecting poorly on the company's reputation or values. It specifically mentioned avoiding illegal activities, discriminatory language, or behavior that could constitute harassment. There was absolutely nothing about wedding photos or dinner with friends. Sarah screenshot the relevant sections and saved them to a folder she created called Evidence. Margaret had just made her first mistake, lying about company policy. Next, she logged into her work email from her phone. Most companies cut off access immediately after termination, but Pinnacle's IT department wasn't known for their efficiency. Sure enough, her email was still active. She had maybe an hour before they remembered to deactivate. She quickly forwarded every email related to the Henderson account to her personal account: client correspondence, meeting notes, draft proposals, research documents. 8 months of work, carefully documented. Derek Chen's name appeared on exactly 4 emails, all of them brief responses to meeting invitations. Then she found something interesting: an email thread from 2 weeks ago between Margaret and Derek that had accidentally been copied to her. The subject line read, "Henderson Transition Plan. Derek, as we discussed, the Henderson account will be yours once we resolve the Sarah situation. I've reviewed your proposal for managing the handoff, and I think your approach is solid. The client shouldn't notice any disruption in service. Let's schedule a meeting to discuss timeline." Derek's response was even more damning. "Thanks, Aunt Margaret. I really appreciate you making this happen. I know taking over Sarah's accounts is a big opportunity, and I won't let you down. Should I start attending her client meetings now to get familiar with the relationship?" Sarah stared at the screen, her heart pounding. They'd been planning this for weeks. The social media excuse was just cover for corporate nepotism at its most blatant. She forwarded the email chain to her personal account and kept digging. Margaret's sent folder revealed a pattern of communication with Derek about restructuring the account management team and identifying advancement opportunities for high-potential employees. Her phone alarm buzzed. Time to head to Café Luna. She'd been so absorbed in her investigation that she'd lost track of time, but she'd found enough evidence to prove that her termination was premeditated and had nothing to do with her supposed social media violation. Café Luna was a small bistro 3 blocks from the Pinnacle building, popular with office workers because of its fast service and strong coffee. Sarah arrived first and claimed a corner table where they could talk privately. The lunch crowd was just starting to filter in, providing perfect cover for their conversation. Jennifer arrived exactly at noon, looking frazzled and constantly checking over her shoulder. She'd changed from her bright morning lipstick to a more subdued nude shade, and her usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by nervous energy. "I can't believe they did this to you," Jennifer said, sliding into the chair across from Sarah. "The whole office is talking about it. Half the people think it's insane, and the other half are scared they're next." "What exactly are people saying?" Sarah asked, cutting straight to the point. "Officially, that you violated social media policy and showed poor judgment, but everyone knows that's garbage. You're the most professional person in the department." Jennifer lowered her voice. "Unofficially, people are saying Margaret needed to make room for Derek, and you were the biggest obstacle." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Jennifer the forwarded email chain. It's worse than that. They've been planning this for weeks. Jennifer's eyes widened as she read. Oh my God, this is actual evidence of nepotism, and they were stupid enough to put it in writing. Margaret made a mistake including me on that email thread, but here's what I don't understand. Why now? Why today? Jennifer looked around the cafe nervously, then leaned forward. There's something else, something I probably shouldn't tell you, but you deserve to know. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. What is it? Henderson called this morning, about an hour after you were escorted out. They wanted to schedule a meeting to finalize the contract. They specifically asked for you. What did Margaret tell them? That you were no longer with the company, but that Derek would be taking over the account and could meet with them this afternoon. Jennifer's expression was grim. Henderson wasn't happy. They said they'd built a relationship with you specifically, and wanted to know why you'd left so suddenly. Sarah's mind raced. What did Margaret say to that? She told them you'd decided to pursue other opportunities, but Mr. Henderson, the CEO, he didn't buy it. He said something about how you'd seemed very committed to the project when you spoke last week. This was better than Sarah had hoped. Henderson wasn't just going to accept the transition quietly. They valued her work enough to question her sudden departure. There's more, Jennifer continued. Derek's meeting with them is at 3 o'clock. He's been in Margaret's office all morning, trying to get up to speed on the account, but Sarah, he doesn't know anything. He's been asking basic questions about their business model, their target demographics, stuff that's in the first paragraph of your proposal. Sarah felt a spark of satisfaction. He's going to crash and burn, probably. But here's the thing. Margaret's been calling other clients too, getting ahead of the story. She's telling them you left for personal reasons, and that Derek will be providing continuity of service. She's trying to lock down the transition before anyone can object. The waitress approached their table, and they quickly ordered salads and coffee. Sarah needed to think, to process this information, and figure out her next move. Jen, I need to ask you something, and I understand if you can't help, but I need to know, are there other people in the office who might be willing to back me up? People who've seen Margaret's favoritism toward Derek? Jennifer was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. There's Tom Bradley in accounts receivable. He's been complaining for months about how Derek gets credit for deals he didn't work on. And Lisa Chen, no relation to Derek. She's in HR, and she's been documenting some questionable decisions Margaret's been making. Lisa's in HR? Yeah, but she's not part of Margaret's inner circle. She's been with the company longer than Margaret has, and she doesn't like the direction things are heading. She might be willing to listen, if you approach her the right way. Sarah felt a plan starting to form. What about upper management? Does anyone above Margaret know what's really going on? That's where it gets interesting. Richard Foster, the VP of Operations, he's been asking questions about department efficiency and employee turnover. Margaret's been trying to keep him happy, but there have been some concerning metrics lately. What kind of metric? Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a screenshot of an internal report. Client retention rates have been dropping. 3 major accounts have left in the past 6 months, and 2 more are threatening to switch provider. Margaret's been blaming it on market conditions, but the truth is, she's been rotating account managers so much that clients can't build stable relationships. Sarah studied the numbers. This is significant. If I can prove that my termination is part of a pattern of poor management decisions that are hurting the company's bottom line, you might have a case, but Sarah, you need to be careful. Margaret has connections throughout the company. She's been here for 8 years, and she knows how to protect herself. Their food arrived, but Sarah had lost her appetite. Her mind was working through possibilities, strategies, ways to expose the truth without destroying her own career prospects in the process. There's something else, Jennifer said quietly. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Margaret's been bragging about how she handled your situation. She told Derek that sometimes you have to make tough decisions to protect the company's interests. She said that in front of 3 other people. She's treating this like some kind of victory, like she outmaneuvered you. It's disgusting. Sarah felt her anger flare again, but this time it was focused, controlled. Margaret had made another mistake. She was getting cocky, talking too much, assuming that Sarah would disappear quietly. I need more evidence, Sarah said. Email records, witness statements, documentation of Derek's lack of qualifications versus his rapid advancement. Can you help me? Jennifer looked scared but determined. I can try, but I need to be careful. I can't lose my job too. I understand. But Jen, this isn't just about me anymore. If Margaret can do this to me, she can do it to anyone. How long before she decides you're in the way of some other family member's advancement? That hit home. Jennifer nodded slowly. You're right. This is bigger than just your situation. They spent the next hour planning. Jennifer would discreetly gather information about other questionable decisions Margaret had made, particularly around Derek's hiring and advancement. She'd also try to document any other conversations where Margaret had discussed restructuring or making room for new talent. Sarah would focus on building her case around the Henderson account and her documented track record. She'd also reach out to Lisa Chen in HR, but carefully, professionally, through proper channels. As they prepared to leave, Jennifer grabbed Sarah's arm. There's one more thing. Margaret's been in contact with other companies in the industry. She's been telling them that you had performance issues and that you left under questionable circumstances. Sarah's blood went cold. She's trying to blacklist me. It looks that way. She's calling it protecting the industry from problematic employees, but really, she's just covering her own tracks. This changed everything. Margaret wasn't just trying to get rid of Sarah, she was trying to destroy her entire career. The gloves were officially off. Thanks for telling me, Sarah said, standing up. And Jen, be careful, don't do anything that could put you at risk. What are you going to do? Sarah looked out the window at the Pinnacle building, visible in the distance. I'm going to give Margaret Blackwood a birthday present. She'll never forget. As she walked back to her car, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Martinez, this is James Henderson, from Henderson Hotels. I understand you're no longer with Pinnacle Marketing. I'd like to discuss this situation with you directly. Are you available for a call this afternoon? Sarah smiled for the first time since walking into Margaret's office that morning. The cavalry was arriving, and Margaret had no idea what was coming. It was still her birthday after all, and the party was just getting started. Sarah sat in her car outside a Starbucks, staring at James Henderson's text message. The CEO of Henderson Hotels wanted to talk to her directly. This was the break she'd been hoping for, but she needed to handle it perfectly. One wrong move could backfire spectacularly. She called him back at 2:15 p.m., knowing that Derek's meeting with Henderson was scheduled for 3. Timing was everything. Mr. Henderson, thank you for reaching out. I was hoping we'd have a chance to speak. Martinez, I'm going to be direct with you. I've been in business for 30 years, and I can smell corporate politics from a mile away. Your company told me you left to pursue other opportunities, but that doesn't match the conversation we had last week about finalizing our contract. Sarah chose her words carefully. I appreciate your directness, Mr. Henderson. The truth is, my departure from Pinnacle was not voluntary, and it had nothing to do with my commitment to your project. I figured as much. Look, I've got a meeting with some kid named Derek Chen in 45 minutes, and I've done my homework. According to LinkedIn, he's been with the company for 6 months and has no significant marketing experience. Meanwhile, you've spent 8 months learning our business inside and out. I understand your concerns. Derek is enthusiastic, but he wasn't involved in developing your campaign strategy. That's putting it diplomatically. Ms. Martinez, I'm going to ask you something, and I want a straight answer. If you were no longer bound by corporate loyalty, would you recommend that Henderson Hotels proceed with Pinnacle Marketing? Sarah felt her heart racing. This was it, the moment where she could either play it safe or go all in. Mr. Henderson, I believe in the campaign we developed together. It's solid strategy based on thorough market research and your specific brand objectives, but I would be concerned about the execution and ongoing account management. That's what I thought. Here's my proposal. I'm going to go to this meeting with Derek Chen, and I'm going to let him present whatever he's cobbled together. Then I'm going to make a decision about our contract. But first, I want to know, are you interested in discussing this project outside of the Pinnacle framework? Sarah's pulse quickened. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that good marketing strategists are hard to find, and I'm not interested in starting over with someone who doesn't understand my business. Think about it. I'll be in touch after my meeting. The line went dead. Sarah sat in stunned silence. James Henderson had just offered her a lifeline, and potentially a way to hit Margaret where it hurt most. She checked the time, 2:30 p.m. Derek would be walking into that meeting in 30 minutes, completely unprepared for what was about to happen. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Derek, just printed out your Henderson proposal, and highlighted his name over yours. He's carrying it into the meeting like he wrote it." Sarah felt a surge of righteous anger. Not only had they stolen her work, but Derek was going to present it as his own creation. That was the final straw. She drove to a nearby office supply store and printed out everything she'd saved from her work email. The original Henderson proposal with her name and digital signature. The email chain proving Margaret and Derek had planned her termination, and the research documents showing months of her correspondence with Henderson's team. Next, she called Lisa Chen in HR. It was time to file a formal complaint. "Lisa, this is Sarah Martinez. I need to schedule a meeting to discuss my termination. I have evidence that suggests it may have violated company policy." Lisa's voice was professional but warm. "Sarah, I heard about what happened. I have to say, I was surprised by the circumstances. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Actually, I was hoping we could meet today. I have documentation that I think you'll want to see, and there's a client meeting happening right now that's directly related to my concerns." There was a pause. "I'm here until 6. Can you make it by 4:30? I'll be there." Sarah's next call was to Tom Bradley in accounts receivable. If Jennifer was right about his concerns regarding Derek's inflated achievements, he might be willing to provide additional context. "Tom, this is Sarah Martinez. I know this is unusual, but I'm wondering if you have a few minutes to talk about account management practices in the marketing department." "Jesus, Sarah, I heard what happened. That's complete BS about the social media thing. Everyone knows what this is really about. Can you be more specific?" "Look, I've been tracking the numbers on Derek's supposed wins. Half the accounts he's claimed credit for were deals you initiated. The kid's been taking credit for your work for months, and Margaret's been letting it happen. Would you be willing to document that?" "You mean like official?" "I'm meeting with HR this afternoon. If you have records that show a pattern of misrepresented achievements, it could be relevant." Tom was quiet for a moment. "You know what? Yeah, I'm tired of watching good people get screwed over while incompetent relatives get promoted. Send me your email, and I'll pull the relevant files." By 3:00 p.m. Sarah had assembled a comprehensive case file. She sat in the parking lot of a coffee shop across from the Pinnacle building, watching the glass tower where Derek Chen was presumably fumbling through her presentation to James Henderson. Her phone rang at 3:45. "Henderson, Miss Martinez. That was the most painful hour of my professional life." "How did it go?" The kid walked in with a presentation that was clearly your work, your research, your strategy, your creative concepts, but he couldn't answer a single question about the reasoning behind any of it. "When I asked him about the demographic analysis for our Phoenix properties, he started talking about Las Vegas market trends." Sarah winced. "He confused your markets?" "Completely. Then he tried to pitch me on a social media strategy that would have been appropriate for a college spring break destination, not a luxury business hotel chain. It was like watching someone try to perform surgery with a manual they'd never read." "I'm sorry you had to go through that. Don't be." It was illuminating. "Miss Martinez, I'm terminating our contract with Pinnacle Marketing effective immediately, and I'd like to offer you a consulting contract to complete the work we started. Are you interested?" Sarah's heart soared. "Very interested." "Good. I'll have my legal team draw up the paperwork. The fee will be exactly what we were paying Pinnacle, $50,000 for the campaign development, plus a $25,000 bonus for the inconvenience they've caused us both. $75,000. Sarah had just turned her worst day into a career-defining opportunity. "Mr. Henderson, I can't thank you enough."
Don't thank me yet. I'm going to need you to start immediately. I want to launch this campaign before the end of the quarter, and I suspect your former employer is going to make things difficult." He was right. Margaret would be furious when she found out that Henderson had pulled their contract, but Sarah was ready for that fight. She arrived at the Pinnacle building at 4:20 p.m., using the visitor entrance since her badge had been deactivated. The security guard, Frank, looked surprised to see her. "Sarah, What are you doing here? I have a meeting with HR. Lisa Chen is expecting me. Frank's expression was sympathetic. I'm sorry about what happened earlier. That whole thing seemed wrong. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate that. The elevator ride to the HR floor felt different now. This morning, she'd been a victim. Now she was a woman with a plan, evidence, and a new client contract worth more than her annual salary. Lisa Chen's office was smaller than Margaret's but felt more welcoming. Lisa was a woman in her early 50s with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She'd been with Pinnacle for 12 years and had a reputation for fairness and discretion. Sarah, please sit down. I've been reviewing your file and I have to say, your termination raises some questions. I'm hoping I can provide some answers. Sarah opened her folder and pulled out the printed emails. I have documentation that suggests my termination was planned in advance for reasons unrelated to the stated cause. Lisa's eyebrows rose as she read the email chain between Margaret and Derek. This is very concerning. They were discussing transitioning your accounts before any disciplinary action was taken. There's more. Sarah showed her the social media policy from the employee handbook alongside the photos Margaret had used as justification. The images they cited as unprofessional don't violate any stated policy. They're normal social activities that have nothing to do with work. Lisa studied the documents carefully. You're right. These photos wouldn't constitute a violation under our current policy. And even if they did, the standard procedure would be a written warning, not immediate termination. I also have evidence that Margaret has been making false statements about my performance to other companies in the industry, which could constitute defamation. That's a serious allegation. Do you have proof? Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Lisa the screenshots of messages from industry contacts who'd been warned about hiring her. 3 different people have forwarded me messages they received from Margaret, all claiming I had performance issues and left under suspicious circumstances. Lisa's expression grew more serious. This is potentially actionable. Sarah, I need to ask, what outcome are you seeking? I want my termination reversed and my reputation restored. I want a formal apology and correction of the false statements made to industry contacts, and I want assurance that this kind of nepotism won't happen to other employees. Those are reasonable requests. I'm going to need to investigate this thoroughly, which means interviewing other employees and reviewing additional documentation. Are you prepared for that process? Absolutely. I have a list of people who can corroborate various aspects of my claims. Lisa made notes on a legal pad. I also need to inform you that as of this afternoon, Derek Shen has been promoted to senior account manager, and he's been given responsibility for all your former accounts, including Henderson Hotels. That was the plan. Although I understand there may have been some complications with that particular client. Sarah smiled. You could say that. Mr. Henderson terminated their contract with Pinnacle this afternoon. He's hired me as an independent consultant to complete the work. Lisa's pen stopped moving. He terminated their contract. That's a significant loss for the company. It's a $2 million account, and Mr. Henderson indicated he might recommend other companies in his network avoid working with Pinnacle based on today's experience. This is getting very complicated. Lisa set down her pen and looked at Sarah directly. I'm going to be honest with you. What you're describing suggests serious misconduct that could result in disciplinary action up to and including termination for the responsible parties. Are you prepared for the potential fallout? Sarah thought about Margaret's smirk when she delivered the termination news. She thought about Derek presenting her work as his own. She thought about the months of work she'd put into building relationships with clients, only to have them handed over to someone who couldn't tell the difference between Phoenix and Las Vegas. I'm prepared, she said firmly. All right, I'm going to start a formal investigation. In the meantime, I'm placing a hold on any external communications about your employment status. Margaret will not be permitted to make any further statements about your performance or departure without legal review. What about my termination? Can it be reversed? That depends on what the investigation reveals, but based on what you've shown me, I think there's a strong case for reinstatement. However, I have to warn you, this process could take weeks, and it's going to be contentious. Sarah stood up. feeling lighter than she had all day. I understand. Thank you for taking this seriously. As she left Lisa's office, her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Margaret just came out of a meeting with upper management. She looks like she's seen a ghost. What did you do? Sarah smiled as she typed back. I told the truth. The rest is just karma. Walking through the lobby, she noticed people looking at her differently. Word was spreading that she was back in the building, that she wasn't going quietly into the night. Outside, the sun was setting over downtown Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Sarah stood on the sidewalk where she'd been humiliated that morning, but now she felt powerful, vindicated. Her phone rang. Henderson. Again. Martinez, I just wanted to let you know that I've reached out to 3 other hotel chains in my network. They're all interested in hearing about your services. It seems your reputation precedes you. That's wonderful news. There's something else. I may have mentioned to a few people that Pinnacle Marketing's account management practices were questionable. I hope that's not inappropriate. Sarah grinned. Mr. Henderson, I think that's called honest business communication. Good. I look forward to working with you. And Miss Martina, happy birthday. Sarah had forgotten. In all the chaos and planning and evidence gathering, she'd completely forgotten that this was supposed to be her special day. But as she looked up at the Pinnacle building, knowing that Margaret Blackwood was probably up there right now trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong, Sarah realized she'd given herself the best birthday present of all. The truth, and it was about to set her free. Sarah woke up the next morning to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word had spread through the marketing industry overnight like wildfire. Henderson Hotels wasn't just any client. They were a major player with connections throughout the hospitality and business sector. When James Henderson talked, people listened. The first call was from Marcus Webb, CEO of Southwest Luxury Resorts. Sarah had met him briefly at an industry conference 6 months ago, but they'd never worked together. Miss Martinez, I hope I'm not calling too early. James Henderson gave me your number and suggested I might want to discuss a potential partnership. By 9 a.m., Sarah had received inquiries from 5 different companies, all referrals from Henderson. The consulting contract that had started as revenge was quickly becoming a full-scale business opportunity. But first, she had unfinished business with Pinnacle Marketing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Emergency. Margaret called a department meeting for. She's telling everyone that Henderson left because of unrealistic client expectations, not because of Derek's presentation. People aren't buying it. Sarah smiled grimly. Margaret was in damage control mode, but she was making the classic mistake of trying to control a narrative that had already escaped her grasp. Another text came through from an unknown number. This is Derek Chen. We need to talk. Can you meet me for coffee? Interesting. Derek wanted to negotiate. Sarah texted back. Cafe Luna, 11 a.m. She arrived at the cafe early and chose the same corner table where she'd met Jennifer the day before. At exactly 11 a.m., Derek Chen walked in looking like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his expensive suit looked wrinkled. Derek Chen was 26 years old, fresh out of business school with an MBA from a decent program, but no real-world experience. He'd gotten the job at Pinnacle 6 months ago based on his academic credentials, and Sarah now knew his family connection to Margaret. In person, he looked younger than his age, with the kind of nervous energy that came from being in over his head. Sarah, thank you for meeting me. He sat down across from her, fidgeting with his coffee cup. I want to start by saying that I never intended for things to go this far. Which things, specifically? The Henderson account. Taking credit for your work. I know how it looks, but I was just following Margaret's instructions. Sarah studied his face. He looked genuinely distressed, but she'd learned not to trust appearances when it came to the Blackwood family network. Derek, you walked into that meeting yesterday carrying my proposal with your name on it. You presented 8 months of my research as your own work. How exactly were you following instructions? Derek's face flushed. Margaret told me that all the account materials were company property, and that as the new account manager I had the right to use them. She said the client wouldn't care who originally developed the strategy as long as the work was good. But you knew you hadn't done the work. Yes, but. Derek ran his hands through his hair. Look, I'm new to this industry. Margaret's been my mentor, and she told me this was how things worked. She said experienced account managers always build on previous work, and that claiming individual credit was just ego. Sarah felt a flicker of sympathy, but she squashed it quickly. Derek might have been naive, but he wasn't stupid. He'd known exactly what he was doing when he highlighted his name over hers on that proposal. What do you want from me, Derek? I want to make this right. Henderson's termination is going to cause problems for both of us. Margaret's furious, and she's talking about suing you for client interference and breach of contract. Let her try. I have documentation proving that my termination was planned before any alleged policy violations occurred, and Henderson came to me, not the other way around. Derek looked shocked. You have documentation. Your aunt made the mistake of including me on some email conversations she probably wishes I hadn't seen. She's not my aunt, Derek said quickly. She's my mother's cousin, but yeah, I can see how that looks. It looks like nepotism because that's exactly what it is. Derek was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee. You're right. I know you're right. But Sarah, you have to understand. I've got student loans, rent, a career to build. When Margaret offered me this opportunity, I thought it was a break, not a setup. A setup? A setup? Think about it. She gives me accounts I'm not qualified to handle, with no proper training or transition period. When they inevitably fail, who do you think is going to take the blame? The experienced department head, or the inexperienced new hire? Sarah hadn't considered this angle. You think she's setting you up to fail? I think she needed someone to take the heat for losing major accounts. Henderson was just the beginning. Without your institutional knowledge and client relationships, I'm going to crash and burn on every account she's assigned me, and when I do, she'll be able to point to my failures as justification for whatever reorganization she's really planning. This was an interesting development. Derek wasn't just Margaret's golden boy, he was her fall guy. What are you proposing? I want to testify in your HR investigation. I'll tell them exactly what Margaret told me to do, including the instructions to present your work as my own. In exchange, I want your help transitioning the accounts properly so that the clients don't suffer. Sarah considered this carefully. Derek's testimony could provide crucial corroboration for her claims about Margaret's misconduct, but helping him succeed with her former accounts felt like rewarding theft. I need guarantees, she said finally. Full written statements about Margaret's instructions, copies of any emails or documents that support your claims, and a formal acknowledgement that the Henderson strategy was my work. Done. And I want you to reach out to the other clients I worked with: Sunset Corporation, Phoenix Metro Alliance, and Desert Vista Properties. Tell them the truth about the transition, and give them my contact information in case they want to discuss their options. Derek looked nervous. Margaret will fire me if she finds out. Derek, you just told me she's setting you up to fail anyway. At least this way, you'll go down with your integrity intact. He nodded slowly. You're right. Okay, I'll do it. They spent the next hour going through the details. Derek provided Sarah with copies of text messages from Margaret, instructing him to take ownership of the Henderson presentation, and to not worry about giving credit to former employees. He also had email instructions about how to handle client questions about Sarah's departure. Most damaging was a voicemail Margaret had left him the night before. Derek, the Henderson situation is a disaster, but we're going to spin it as a client with unrealistic expectations. Do not, under any circumstances, admit that you weren't prepared for that meeting. If anyone asks, you'll say that Sarah left incomplete information and that's why there were knowledge gaps. Derek played the voicemail on speaker, and Sarah recorded it with her phone. This is Margaret instructing you to lie about what happened. I know, I can't do it anymore. Sarah's phone buzzed with a call from Lisa Chen in HR. I need to take this. Derek, send me everything you've promised by end of business today. And Derek, you're doing the right thing. She answered the call as Derek left the cafe. Lisa, What's the up? I've completed preliminary interviews with Jennifer Walsh and Tom Bradley. Their statements corroborate your claims about preferential treatment for Derek and irregularities in account assignments. I'm scheduling a formal meeting with Margaret Blackwood for tomorrow morning. What about the investigation timeline? Based on the evidence collected so far, I'm expediting the process. This isn't just about your individual case anymore. There are broader concerns about management practices and potential legal liability for the company. Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction. What kind of legal liability? If we can prove that your termination was pretextual and motivated by nepotism, the company could face wrongful termination claims. Additionally, the false statements made to industry contacts could constitute defamation. Our legal department is very concerned about exposure. So what happens next? I'm recommending to senior management that your termination be reversed immediately, and that you be offered full reinstatement with back pay. We're also going to issue formal corrections to any external communications about your departure. Sarah's heart raced. And Margaret? That's still under review, but I can tell you that her authority to make personnel decisions is being suspended pending the completion of the investigation. After hanging up, Sarah sat in the cafe for another hour, processing the rapid turn of events. 24 hours ago she'd been unemployed and blacklisted. Now she had multiple job offers, a lucrative consulting contract, and her former employer was scrambling to avoid a lawsuit. Her phone rang again. This time it was Richard Foster, the VP of Operations at Pinnacle. Ms. Martinez, this is Richard Foster. I believe you know who I am. Of course, Mr. Foster. How can I help you? I think the question is how we can help you. I've been briefed on the situation by our HR department, and I want to personally apologize for the irregularities in your termination process. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss your immediate reinstatement. I appreciate that, Ms. Foster, but I should mention that I've already accepted consulting contracts with several clients including Henderson Hotels. I understand, and we don't want to interfere with your business relationship. However, we'd like to explore ways to formalize those relationships through Pinnacle, potentially with you in a senior leadership role. Sarah almost laughed. They weren't just offering her job back, they were offering her a promotion. What kind of leadership role? We're restructuring the marketing department and looking for someone to head up client relations and strategic development. It would be a significant step up from your previous position, with commensurate compensation. And Margaret Blackwood? Ms. Blackwood's future with the company is under review. I can assure you that you would not be reporting to her in any capacity. Sarah ended the call with a promise to consider the offer. As she walked back to her car, her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Margaret just got called into Foster's office. She looked terrified. Also, Derek's been going around the office apologizing to people and saying he's going to tell the truth about everything. What did you do to him? The answer was simple. She'd given Derek Chen a choice between integrity and complicity, and apparently he'd chosen integrity. By 3 p.m., Sarah was back home, surrounded by contracts and job offers. Henderson's legal team had sent over the consulting agreement, $75,000 for the campaign completion, with options for additional projects. Southwest Luxury Resorts wanted to discuss a 6-month contract, worth $100,000. Phoenix Metro Alliance was considering leaving Pinnacle entirely and hiring Sarah directly, but the most interesting development came at 4:30 p.m., when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole she saw Margaret Blackwood standing on her doorstep, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Sarah had ever seen her. Sarah opened the door but didn't invite her in. Margaret, this is unexpected. Sarah, we need to talk. I think there's been a misunderstanding about your termination, and I want to find a way to resolve this situation amicably. A misunderstanding? You fired me for posting wedding photos on Facebook. Margaret's composure cracked slightly. The social media issue was, perhaps, an overreaction. But you have to understand, I was under pressure from upper management to reduce headcount, and difficult decisions had to be made. Difficult decisions like promoting your cousin's son and giving him my accounts. Margaret's face went pale. Who told you Derek was my cousin? Does it matter? The point is, you committed nepotism and used fabricated policy violations to cover it up. Sarah, please, I know how this looks, but there are things you don't understand about the pressure I've been under. Derek's hiring wasn't my idea, it came from higher up, and I was told to find ways to integrate him into the department. This was interesting. Margaret was either lying to save herself, or there were additional layers to this situation that Sarah hadn't uncovered. Even if that's true, you chose to destroy my career to advance his. You fired me on my birthday, and then tried to blacklist me in the industry. I never meant for it to go that far. The calls to other companies were I was trying to control the narrative, to prevent rumors from spreading. By spreading lies about my performance, Margaret looked defeated. I made mistakes, but Sarah, if you pursue this investigation, it's not just going to hurt me. Derek could lose his job, and there are other people in the department who could get caught up in the fallout.
You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my reputation. What do you want? What would it take to resolve this quietly? Sarah studied Margaret's face. The woman who had smirked while delivering her termination was gone, replaced by someone who clearly understood that her career was in jeopardy. It's too late for quiet resolution, Margaret. You made this public when you called other companies to trash my reputation. You involved other people when you used Derek as your fall guy, and you made it personal when you chose my birthday to humiliate me. Please, Sarah, I'll give you a glowing recommendation. I'll personally call every company I contacted and correct the record. I'll even support your promotion to department head. Department head? I know Foster offered you a leadership position. I'll recommend you for my job. Full authority over the marketing department. My salary plus 20%. Complete autonomy over personnel decisions. Sarah felt a moment of temptation. Margaret's job was everything she'd worked toward. Authority, respect, the ability to shape the department's direction, but accepting it this way would always feel tainted. I'll consider your offer, Sarah said finally. But Margaret, the investigation is going forward regardless. Too many people have been hurt by your management style, and that needs to be addressed. Margaret nodded, understanding that this was the best outcome she could hope for. As she walked back to her car, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Just sent you everything I promised. Margaret doesn't know yet, but she will soon. Thank you for giving me the chance to do the right thing. Sarah closed her door and leaned against it, processing the surreal turn her life had taken. 24 hours ago, she'd been devastated, humiliated, and unemployed. Now she had more opportunities than she knew what to do with, and her former tormentor was begging for mercy. It had been quite a birthday after all. 1 week later, Sarah Martinez walked through the glass doors of Pinnacle Marketing Solutions as the newly appointed Director of Client Strategy and Development. The same marble lobby that had witnessed her humiliation now felt like a victory parade. The investigation had concluded faster than anyone expected. Derek's testimony, combined with the email evidence and witness statements, painted a picture of systematic misconduct that went far beyond Sarah's individual case. The legal department had recommended immediate action to limit the company's liability exposure. Margaret Blackwood had been terminated for cause on Thursday morning. Derek Shen had been quietly reassigned to a junior analyst position in a different department, with mandatory mentorship and a 6-month probationary period. Richard Foster had personally called every industry contact Margaret had spoken to, issuing formal corrections and apologies. But the most satisfying moment came when Sarah received a handwritten note from James Henderson. Congratulations on your new position. I've already recommended you to 4 other CEOs. Sometimes the best revenge is massive success. Her new office was on the 15th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Phoenix. It was larger than Margaret's old office, with modern furniture and a view that stretched to the mountain. On her desk sat a small potted plant, Gerald the succulent, rescued from her cardboard box and thriving in his new environment. Jennifer Walsh knocked on her door at 10 a.m., carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the biggest smile Sarah had ever seen. Director Martinez, do you have a moment for your old friend from reception? Always. And it's still just Sarah. She gestured to the sitting area near the windows. I can't believe how much has changed in 1 week. The whole building is buzzing. Half the people are thrilled that Margaret's gone, and the other half are nervous about what comes next. Jennifer settled into one of the chairs. But honestly, Sarah,
People are excited to work for someone who actually understands the business. Speaking of which, I have an offer for you. I'm restructuring the department, and I need someone to head up client communications. Someone who knows the company culture and has her finger on the pulse of what's really happening. Jennifer's eyes widened. Are you offering me a promotion? I'm offering you the chance to help build something better. Better management, better opportunities for advancement, based on merit, better communication between leadership and staff. Interested? Are you kidding? Yes. They spent the next hour discussing Sarah's vision for the department, transparent promotion criteria, regular feedback sessions, and most importantly, zero tolerance for favoritism or retaliation. It was going to be the kind of workplace Sarah had always wanted to be part of. At noon, Derek Shen appeared in her doorway, looking nervous but determined. Sarah, I wanted to thank you for recommending me for the analyst position instead of pushing for my termination. You did the right thing when it mattered, Derek. Everyone deserves a second chance. I also wanted you to know that I've enrolled in evening classes for digital marketing certification. I realize I have a lot to learn if I want to build a legitimate career in this field. Sarah nodded approvingly. That's smart. And Derek? The offer still stands. If you ever have questions about strategy or client management, my door is open. But next time you'll earn your success instead of inheriting it. Derek's relief was visible. I won't let you down. After he left, Sarah turned to her computer and pulled up the Henderson Hotels campaign. The client had agreed to let her complete the project through Pinnacle rather than as an independent contractor, which meant the company would retain the relationship while Sarah received credit for the work. The campaign was launching in 2 weeks, and the early indicators were promising. Henderson's marketing team was thrilled with the strategy, and they'd already discussed expanding the partnership to include their West Coast properties. But the real victory came at 3 p.m., when her assistant buzzed her with an unexpected call. Sarah, I have Amanda Torres from Pacific Business Magazine Online 1. She's calling about the industry leadership article they're writing. Sarah had forgotten about the article. Pacific Business Magazine was doing a feature on rising stars in Phoenix marketing, and they'd interviewed her months ago when she was still just an account manager. Miss Martinez, congratulations on your promotion. We'd love to update our article to reflect your new position. It's quite a story, from account manager to director in 1 week. Thank you. It's been an interesting journey. We've heard there was some drama involved. Industry sources are saying you faced some challenges before your promotion. Would you care to comment? Sarah chose her words carefully. I think every professional faces obstacles in their career. The important thing is how you respond to those challenges and what you learn from them. Very diplomatic. We've also heard that you've become something of a champion for workplace fairness. Is that accurate? I believe in merit-based advancement and transparent management practices. If that makes me a champion for fairness, then I'll wear that title proudly. One last question. Any advice for other young professionals who might face similar challenges? Sarah smiled, thinking back to that morning, exactly 1 week ago when she'd sat in her car, holding a box of her belongings and feeling like her world had ended. Document everything. Trust your instincts and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than respect. And sometimes the worst day of your life can become the catalyst for the best thing that ever happened to you. After the interview, Sarah stood at her window watching the late afternoon sun reflect off the glass buildings downtown. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. Saw the article announcement online. Mom and Dad are so proud. How does it feel to be the comeback queen? How did it feel? Sarah considered the question. A week ago she'd been devastated, humiliated, and convinced her career was over. Today she had her dream job, the respect of her colleagues, and a future full of possibilities. But more than that, she'd proven something to herself. She'd discovered that she was stronger than she'd ever imagined, more resourceful than she'd given herself credit for, and absolutely unwilling to accept injustice quietly. Her phone rang one more time. Henderson Hotels. Sarah, it's Jane. I wanted to give you a heads up that Southwest Luxury Resorts just signed a contract with Pinnacle specifically requesting you as their account director. Apparently word is spreading about your work. That's wonderful news. There's something else. I'm organizing a hospitality industry conference in Las Vegas next month, and I'd like you to be one of our keynote speakers. The topic is turning setbacks into success. Interested?" Sarah laughed, remembering Margaret's accusation that her social media presence was unprofessional. Now she was being invited to speak at industry conferences. "I'd be honored." As the sun set over Phoenix, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Sarah reflected on the strange journey her 29th birthday had taken her on. What had started as the worst day of her professional life had become a masterclass in justice, resilience, and the power of standing up for yourself. Margaret Blackwood was gone, her reign of favoritism and intimidation ended. Derek Chen was getting a real chance to prove himself based on merit rather than connections. Jennifer Walsh had been promoted to a position where her talents would be recognized and rewarded, and Sarah Martinez had gone from victim to victor in less than a week. But perhaps the most satisfying part wasn't the promotion, or the salary increase, or even the industry recognition. It was the knowledge that she'd fought for what was right, not just for herself but for everyone who'd been marginalized or overlooked by Margaret's toxic management style. Her computer chimed with an email from the legal department. The subject line read, "Margaret Blackwood Settlement Agreement." Margaret had agreed to a financial settlement that included a confidentiality clause, a non-compete agreement, and a prohibition on contacting any Pinnacle clients or employees for 2 years. Attached was a formal letter of apology that would be sent to every industry contact Margaret had spoken to, correcting the record about Sarah's departure and professional reputation. It was over. Completely, definitively over. Sarah gathered her things and prepared to leave her new office. Tomorrow would bring fresh challenges, accounts to manage, strategies to develop, a department to rebuild. But tonight she was going to celebrate. As she waited for the elevator, she passed the cubicle where she'd worked for 3 years. Someone new had already moved in, a young woman about Sarah's age when she'd started, bright-eyed and eager to make her mark. Sarah made a mental note to introduce herself tomorrow, to make sure this newcomer had the mentorship and support that Sarah had been denied. The cycle of poor management ended here. The elevator doors opened, and Sarah stepped inside, catching her reflection in the polished steel. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who'd ridden this same elevator in tears just 7 days ago. This woman was a director, a leader, a fighter. This woman had taken the worst day of her life and turned it into the launching pad for everything she'd ever wanted. And it had all started with being fired on her birthday. As the elevator descended toward the lobby, Sarah Martinez smiled. Sometimes the best revenge really was living well. But in her case, it had been living well, fighting smart, and never, ever backing down. The glass doors of Pinnacle Marketing Solutions closed behind her, but this time she knew she'd be walking through them again tomorrow. Not as a victim, not as someone who'd been broken down and pushed out, as the woman in charge. And that, she decided, was the best birthday present she could have given herself. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss our latest upload.